You know, it was actually while I was recording that last Greatest Reenacting Experiences video that I was reminded of another excellent experience that I had at that same exact event that I'd like to talk about again here today. Same event, same rights event. It was actually the first night that we spent there, which, oh, I should mention, this event took place in February, so while there was no snow, it was still freezing, and we slept outside. In fact, it very nearly was freezing when we were sleeping outside. Well, I should say it wasn't that bad. You know, we did have a shack to sleep in. It did have at least 2.5 walls, and we had a couple of tarps that we could wrap around it. So, you know, we were being quite cushy at this event as far as Soviet standards are concerned. But, yeah, we were sleeping outside. But, right. The night before, you know, the big story that I just told you earlier about, you know, holding the line with the trench and everything, we were working actually on expanding, the Russians were, some, you know, some trench lines and whatnot. But the thing is that because this was a private tactical event... Oh, right, I forgot to do the intro. Intro! All right, welcome back. The thing about this event was, because it was a private, tactical event, you didn't have to rely on things like, well, as strict safety regulations. And so, even though that night it was pitch black, also, incidentally, one of the first nights, indeed, actually, the first night that I ever really saw the stars, which was, oh, it was fantastic, absolutely brilliant. But yes, pitch black night, maybe even been a new moon, who knows, but stars, you know, being the only thing that really lights the way, and we're in the middle of these fairly dense, fairly treacherous, all things considered, woods. And actually, I don't have my glasses, which, yeah, I made it out okay, all right. Not the best idea, but you know, the young foolishness, as it were. But so yeah, that night we're sitting in the trench. I think it was a different trench from the original one or there, but we're sitting in a trench, and we have our e-tools and actually a pickaxe, and we are struggling slowly to dig out more of a defensive position for ourselves because we know we're going to be using it tomorrow. So keep digging. It's myself, a friend of mine who I joined the group with, and our sergeant. We're all, you know, in there digging away. And the ground, incidentally, is completely frozen over, so it's not exactly going too terribly well, trying to eat away at this opposite of thawed, frozen ground. The thing about this first night of the event is, because it was a tactical, it was still going on. It wasn't like most reenactments where, oh, all right, you know, it's after 5 o'clock, public leaves, all right, break out the phones and the alcohol and and, you know, it's just basically camping. No. It was on. The event was still on, and we knew that there was something of a little game going on that night where there were Germans patrolling around the forest, looking for hidden Russian positions, trying to catch us out and whatnot. And, you know, there were little skirmishes, so to say, going on in the woods. Nobody, because it was so dark, there were still safety regulations. Nobody's guns were loaded, and they did check that beforehand, so there wasn't a risk of, you know, actually, like, fighting. But the idea still of, like, these little patrols moving around, basically just trying to spot or find each other in the pitch black. And so, you know, there's something of a war game going on there. We're there, we're digging and we're expanding our trenches. And we have a lantern to help us. It's very, very dim because, of course, we're in a combat zone. But we still have a lantern. And I remember, you know, it was really quite peaceful, actually. We're wearing our winter gear, which is really quite lovely. But, you know, it's a cold night. The air is fogging in front of us, and we're slowly digging away, and we're sharing stories and everything and talking about the event. And as we're working, our sergeant strikes up a song, the song of the Volga boatmen, which I won't even attempt to sing it here, but you can hear in the background there. Very slow, morose, meaningful in a way, working song of sorts as we're going away. Da, 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 that sort of thing. And suddenly, we hear, very quietly in the distance, crackling of trees, of leaves underneath jack-booted feet of the fascist and whatnot. And he gives us a signal like this. Doesn't say anything, just symbols. And he slowly lowers the lantern back down to nothingness. Gestures all of us to get down. We grab our e-tools, I remember very distinctly gripping this thing for dear life, the wood grain of the e-tool, really digging into the flesh, because I don't exactly have very calloused hands. Digging into the flesh, and we all get as low down in this hole as we possibly can. It distinctly felt at that time, being very shallow, without any sort of wood furnishings on the bottom, as a trench eventually has. It felt rather distinctly as a tomb would, I dare say, or a grave. But yes, we're laying down and we're gripping our e-tools. We didn't bring our Mosins with us. The Mosins are back down at the camp. We only have our e-tools and a pickaxe. Or no, it wasn't a pickaxe, it was a large shovel, but you get the idea. Gripping the e-tools. And we're all just sort of looking back and forth at one another like, what are we supposed to do? Because we hear this creaking, and it's getting closer, and it's getting closer, and it's getting closer. Eventually, the Germans come upon us, they get like really, really close. And I didn't see actually the German that my sergeant went after, but Vladimir, he decided that he was going to take action. See, he wasn't going to just let this German walk on by us, as it's very possible that they would have done without even seeing us, or, as it were, fall in the hole and possibly injured himself and ruin the event. You get the idea. No, he's walking along, the German is, I'm sure his car, 98, was sort of, held up in front of him or down underneath like this, whatever. He's walking all around. And our sergeant, our good sergeant, I'll use my bayonet as a replica of the e-tool. So unfortunately, I don't have one of them with me at the moment, but you get the idea from this. He takes his e-tool, raises it above his head, and leaps, just literally leaps, full bodied, full into it. He leaps out of the trench and tackles the other guy right to the ground. They go tumbling a little bit ways down the hill, and I just hear the sounds of like struggle of them wrestling basically on the ground and swearing in their respective languages. And I'm stunned. Myself and the friend that I was with that day, we're both stunned. We're just laying in the trench looking at each other like, did he just, okay. We hadn't been to a lot of World War II events, and we had not yet fully grown entirely used to the idea of such a physicality being involved, because you don't do that in Rev War events, which is the only thing. Well, he had Civil War experience as well, but you get the idea. You don't do that in linear combat type events oftentimes. You don't really get physical with it. It's very dangerous to do, but that's what Vladimir did, and oh my god, it was cool. Terribly, ridiculously unsafe, but really fun. And before we do have time to react, maybe, book it out of the trench trying to get back to camp, or going over to try and help our comrade or something like that, all of a sudden, I forgot exactly what he said, but I'm sure he said something witty. There's a German boot right in front of the trench, and there's a gun sort of pointed, not at us, of course, because that'd be unsafe again, but sort of in the middle of us, just pointing down into the trench, and we were captured by the Germans, because I look up and it's like, oh, hello, Zweite Kompanie, hello, привет, товарищи. Yeah. We were captured that day. They brought our sergeant back, by the scruff of his neck and threw him back in the hole. And of course, there were many jokes had about, oh look, they even dug their graves for us. All right, now shoot them and we'll move on. All that sort of thing. It became a bit more memey and jokey at that time. But even still, the moments leading up to that, when just hearing the Germans approaching through the woods and having the sergeant leap out like that, it was terribly heroic. Bit unsafe, but an awful lot, again, of fun. Of course, until the next time, my dear viewers, Nishagunazad, and I am and I shall remain your most humble and obedient of servants.